Welcome back to Sustainability Matters. I'm Tria Case. In today's episode, we explore the powerful connection between art and climate action. Art has always been a compelling tool for social change, including to address the most pressing environmental challenges of our time. From installations that inspire reflection to performances that call for action, artists are playing an essential role in raising awareness and motivating change on climate issues. In today's show, we'll hear from artists and experts who are using creativity to spark meaningful conversations and drive positive change in the fight against climate change. We're joined by three remarkable guests using creative platforms to connect art and climate action. Anais Reyes is a curator at the Climate Museum, an institution dedicated to inspiring action on the climate crisis through art, conversation, and community engagement. Nikki Lint is an interdisciplinary artist whose work utilizes art to tell powerful stories about the human experience within the climate narrative, blending creativity with urgent advocacy. And Kendra Sullivan, a poet, artist, and writer, and environmental activist, who is the director for the Center of the Humanities at the CUNY Graduate Center and the co-director of the CUNY Climate Justice Hub. Welcome.
Hi.
Thank you all for being here. Excited to have this conversation. You're all doing incredible work. Let's talk about the Climate Museum. And one thing is we're sitting here in front of an incredible mural that was recently an exhibit at the Climate Museum. How did the Climate Museum come to fruition, and how are you engaging the public in these important issues?
Yes, so I just wanted to say thank you for having me on your show. So the Climate Museum is the first museum in the U.S. focused on climate change and climate action. So we use the arts and exhibitions to get people really engaged and activated on the issue. And we consider ourselves an activist museum. And so one statistic that's really fundamental to the work that we do is basically that 64% of Americans are worried about climate change, but 66% rarely or never talk about it. And so there's this overwhelming amount of people who really don't know what to say and don't know what to do. And we found in our earlier exhibitions that people kept coming to our art programs and asking us, what can I do? What can I do? And we realized that we had to provide an answer to that question. And so all of our programming follows this structure of art, learning, and action. And so, for example, our last exhibition, it was called The End of Fossil Fuel. So the exhibition talked about the fossil fuel industry. It's basically the biggest barrier to transformative climate solutions. And we talked about the origins of the industry and how we got here. And as part of that exhibition, we also talked about this really amazing study that showed just how many people care about climate change, and also how everyone feels that no one cares about climate change. The study basically found that 80 to 90% of Americans underestimate concern for climate change and support for climate policy, which was wild. The researchers called it a false social reality, which is such a strong term. And so having that in our exhibition, that was the learning aspect. People really, their perspectives were changed. And so the second part is the art. We commissioned this mural by the artist R. Gregory Christie, and it captured the past, present, and future. So the past, the origins of the fossil fuel industry, the present being the struggle for justice, and then the future being, the safe, just, transformative world that we could live in. And people responded really strongly to that too. And then finally, we have our Action Center, which is a part of every exhibition that we do. And people can commit to civic and collective actions. And as part of that, we have the sticker wall, where people put the sticker of the action they've committed to, and you can see just how many people care about this just like you do. Like I said, it shows that collective presence and the strength in numbers. And so through this structure, we found something that's really strong, that people really connect with. They're able to connect with each other, and they leave feeling empowered, and they feel like they have agency in the issue.
Incredible. Yeah, amazing to be able to find a way to connect and then to think about what action can I take to actually do something about it. Amazing. Nikki, your work is combining different mediums, and one of the things that you have been doing is recording sounds. And so I'd love to take a moment, maybe let everyone hear a bit about what you've done, and then we can chat about it a little bit.
Okay.
I love how this reminds us to sort of stop and listen in ways that we don't normally listen. What inspired you to do this?
So I come from a visual background in art, and in 2018, I went to work on a project in Alaska, and in which I collaborated with permafrost scientists, and we were looking at different features of what's happening with permafrost thawing. And one of the features that stuck out to me the most was these thermokarst failures, which we saw in the clip, which is just these huge sinkhole-like features that are occurring more and more all over the Arctic. And I did something I probably shouldn't have done, which is I went down into one of these slumps, and I just was so overtaken by the sound that I was hearing in there. It was very sort of meditative and beautiful, but at the same time, I fully understood that I was listening to the sounds of a changing planet. And this felt to me like something that I really thought I would like to share and do something with. Luckily, I had with me a recorder for something else that I was doing, so I was able to record these sounds and bring them back to New York City. After that, I was in New York City, and I got really interested in these underground sounds and what sounds there might be underground. There wasn't much about that I could find, and it turns out there's this incredible frontier of sounds. So I created the Underground Sound Project for New York City that was in Prospect Park, and there were 8 stops along a 1-mile route where you could listen to sounds underwater, in the soils, in trees. And what I really was hoping that the project would do is connecting with nature in this new way, hopefully like connect to feelings of empathy, and through that, maybe even the extra step of stewardship. And then in 2023, I returned to the Arctic. That's when I filmed this clip. This was in the tundra in the Arctic Circle. And I had another really amazing experience in one of these thermokarst slumps where I now had much more, my equipment was a lot better. I had repurposed some microphones, even built some that I brought with me. And when I put that into the ice of the frozen soils, and I could listen to it really from inside of it, there were thousands of these drops of water and soil falling. And together they created a sound that almost sounded like a very rapid beating heart. And I realized I also had this like rapid heartbeat when I heard that, and it just made me realize how interconnected we are to local ecosystems and global ecosystems as well.
Incredible. Reminding us to stop and listen to the heartbeat of the earth.
Yeah.
Just thinking about the different ways that we can bring more people to the table and maybe try to get people to think about these challenges with different lenses. It's incredible medium that you've chosen there. So thank you for that. I'd love to take a moment and ask Kendra to read us one of her poems. Maybe you could just stand up and read it for us.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. Linear regression. Donning yellow latex gloves, I run sudsy, rubber fingers through wet feathers. Volunteer, from the Latin volo, to wish, to will, of one's free will, feels out of place here, and so do I, since I neither wish nor will this, though willingly I administer, see bedside rites to birds, attending to avian death with dish soap, sucking air, the cormorant diaphragm in my hands blowfishes globularly as I scrub the deep water oil slicking his rib cage into a sink full of dawn bubbles. Back home, I lather my hands singing happy birthday to myself. It takes as long as it takes. Sloughed grime and skin slink down the sink. Its next revolution round the hydrologic grist leads right to the wastewater treatment plant on Greenpoint Ave. Light dances off its buffed chrome eggs, digesting sewage and deflecting sunsets. Cities are such optimistic places where death no decay. Under the bridge, down the street, scud from Whale and Newtown creeks meet, and a kayaker glides by 2 cranes, a sandhill and a derrick. When his balloon popped, my son said, "It's just the life of nature. It's funny because the word is inverted order, or the order is inverted word, or the word order is inverted, but it's not funny because he's right."
Wow, that was powerful. Thank you for that. Do you want to talk a little bit about the inspiration behind writing that poem?
Sure. I came to the poem with questions about what nature was and how my child, who's 6 years old, was coming to understand it in a disturbed environment that was nonetheless full of beauty and life and vigor and vitality, one that was deserving of his attention, respect, engagement, and adoration, love, all of the things. It was inspired by work I had done with avian rehabilitation post-oil spill, and also work I had done in a hospice facility for humans. And so a term that means a lot to me is the idea of hospicing and the care and attention that we offer to provide things that are in transition with. And so this poem was really just a meditation on the ways in which we bring our loving care to environments, places, and people that are slipping past a point of previous recognition and turning into something that we don't yet understand, but require our love and devotion irregardless.
Yeah. I would love to hear a little bit more about the boat experience. I mean, first of all, you're a boat builder. That's amazing. Can you talk to us a little bit about sort of how did you embark upon that, and how do you feel that that experience is making the change that you're looking for?
Mm-hmm. I'm an environmental artist. I work with a collective called Mare Liberum, the Free Seas. We build boats, teach people to build boats, and get people out on local bodies of water to talk about their relationship to the lived experience of being on the water, and also the toxic legacies of environmental injustice that have infiltrated their surround. So we started our boat collective right after Hurricane Katrina, and our prevailing idea, was that everybody everywhere should be able to build a boat in an hour or less with whatever materials they had at hand. We happened to live in the Gowanus region of Brooklyn at the time, and so we went out into the streets at night and we wheat pasted stitch and ply construction methods all over the construction site barriers to the developments that were rapidly rising around what would become the Venice of Brooklyn. We would pull down the fences and we would cut out the boat patterns and we would glue them together, and then we would paint them slapdash style with epoxy, and then they were seaworthy, and we would get them out on the water, and we would teach people how to love their environment exactly as it is, no matter its levels of toxicity, no matter the toxic histories that it's forced to endure. And we would also really do a lot of work with historians and scientists to surface and make much more legible a lot of different expert knowledge. And at the same time, we would work with local knowledge holders to ensure that their knowledge was part and parcel with the way that people were understanding place, their relationship to it, and also the ways that they might be able to change its fate and theirs alongside it. We've been doing that in rivers around the country and around the world ever since. For instance, our most recent project was with Waterfront Toronto on the Don River, and we were brought in as artists to support engagement with a whole bunch of different stakeholders who had a lot of different relationships to the river and a lot of different understandings of who it should be for, how it should be used, what it should be named, and what its future should look like. And so art became this sort of boundary object that we were able to use to bring people to the table to discuss very, very difficult, sticky, and sometimes oppositional opinions about how a space could be used. And that's part of the largest renaturalization project in the history of the world. It's a 50-year project that they're trying to renaturalize the Don.
Wow, exciting. I'm a big believer in project-based change, so I love that story. I'd love to hear from all of you about sort of, art can play an incredibly powerful role in change. What do you see as the role, art plays in this arena of climate?
So I think art can be really instrumental. I think there's a tendency to look away in the face of existential issues like climate change. It's really hard, and that's very understandable. But I think that art is really good at getting in and digesting that really uncomfortable nook between human emotion and these larger issues. Speaking from a personal perspective, for me, I think policy change is really great, works really well at a local level. That's some of the thinking that went into the underground sound project that I worked on was having it in a local park where there would be a lot of people that would interact with the project that normally wouldn't have access to this kind of a collaborative project about these issues, about environmental issues, and that maybe they wouldn't have contact with even with art at all. So that was very important. Part of the thinking of the project was to get it out into the community. And then focusing out, this past fall, I had the opportunity to have my work shown at COP29, a yearly climate summit by the UN. And the piece that I showed there was called Subterranean Voice. And that piece was made up of 3 parts. There was recordings from the Arctic, of more underground sound, the changing planet. And then I created paintings while listening to these sounds and translating those sounds, the patterns, the rhythms, even the color, into paint. Also some writing as sort of a third part of the project so that I could bring people out of this busy summit, but actually to funnel them to a location where something very specific was happening.
Do you think that the art and the work that you're doing has helped to shift perspective?
I mean, it's always hard to know, but there was a curriculum made out of the Underground Sound Project, and I saw children experience the project, and that's a very direct moment when you see somebody's face light up and be like, oh my God, there's a sound in that tree, and and that person is connecting. And I think these sort of for me, it's very much about finding a way to help people connect. In New York City, there's so much, people don't realize how many natural spaces there are. There's dunes and marshes and forests, and just trying to help get people into those places and connect to those places seems really important.
Remembering that even in this urban environment, we're in an environment.
Yes. Yeah.
How about at the Climate Museum? I mean, this must be a regular activity for you all.
Absolutely. I completely agree with a lot of what you were saying and a lot of what Kendra was saying about art is meant to connect to people in different ways. It's meant to be accessible. It's meant to make space for people at the table. And part of the way that we see it at the Climate Museum is that art is not just something extra. It's not just a luxury. Art is a tool, and it's a strategy, and it's part of the political process. And sometimes we forget that art can sway public opinion, and it can really capture momentum. And one thing that we think about at the Climate Museum is this policy concept called the Overton window, which some of you may be familiar with. Basically, it is what feels acceptable and appropriate to the public as policy, what is realistic. And art has a lot of power to push that window and respond to public sentiment. And we've seen that with Rachel Carson's Silent Spring. We've seen that with the Earthrise photo, the first photo of the Earth from the moon. And we feel like we play off of that structure. For example, this last exhibition, we were lucky enough to work with George Mason University to do some audience polling. And we found that after viewing the exhibition, we polled the audience before the exhibition and after the exhibition, and we found that after our audience saw the exhibition, they felt more confident and more determined to talk about climate change. They felt more hopeful that what they could do could make a difference in bringing about a climate just future. And they basically were able to acknowledge their agency, this, seemingly small window to just being invited to the table actually can have a huge impact on people and on the world and on policy.
Absolutely.
I can follow that up by saying, or describing a term that my collaborators and I came up with along the way called policy shaper. So artists as policy shapers. You know, we're not out there arguing for specific lines on specific documents that will have specific outcomes, but we are in rooms with people who are making those determinations. And so over time, we do see the ways in which our behaviors and our creative projects have impact. And as a practical, or as an example based in my own life experience, I've been doing waterborne art, which is what a lot of us who do art on the water call it, waterborne art, since about 2010. And there's a very adventurous and community of New York-based artists who do this work. There's Marie Lorenz, Duke Riley, Mary Mattingly, who we were talking about earlier, Sarah Cameron Sunda, who did a project that was affiliated with the Climate Museum. And so we've been getting people out on local bodies of water since 2010. Our original idea was that the water was the largest unscripted public space in New York City, and it was being underutilized. That is no longer really a concern, right? Citizens of New York City today have the opportunity to ride on any number of ferries that didn't exist back then. There are beaches, waterfront parks. The city's orientation, it could be better. I'm not saying it's like, the problem has been solved, but people, I used to think that people had their backs turned to the sea in New York City.
And we did.
And I think that we're now looking at it.
Yep.
And I think in part that's because of all of the artists who were working, and I don't mean to exclude anyone in this equation, but just because we're talking about art, I'll say all of the artists who were really ensuring that people got out on the water. And just to say for Mari Liberum, your aha moment with the kiddos when they realize that everything has a sound, what we do is we take everyday detritus and we turn it into a boat that floats and can hold the weight of your body and move you safely across a body of water. This, for a child or an adult, is a truly transformative experience. So yeah, I've seen it in ways big and small transpire over the years.
Art has, I believe, has the ability to heal and to bring people together. What are your thoughts about how art can help people sort of navigate, I guess, not just the climate crisis, but also in a way to help us find some respite from all the information that's being thrown our way?
We have such interesting, varied stories. When we were working with R. Gregory Christie, he's an award-winning children's book illustrator, but he was new to the climate conversation. So we asked him, like, hey, can you paint a climate mural for us? Can you depict climate justice? And he's like, great, I can absolutely do that. What does that look like? What do you mean? And it was such an interesting conversation to be like, oh, what do we mean? What does this look like? When we ask people, what do they imagine? And we realize that often we're given this vision of apocalypse and doom and gloom. And then when you ask someone to imagine a better future, they're like, oh, I've never done that. And it was such a powerful moment, again, for us to be like, we just need the art to help us envision something better, and that can help us heal. Like, that's another starting point.
There's programs around that could be really interesting in terms of bringing people together, which has also a healing side. One that I especially want to bring up since we're in New York City is Nature Place, and that's co-directed by Lindsay Campbell and David Maddox. It's a place where artists get a residency for a year and work on a project within the city, and it's very collaborative. There's ecologists and all kinds of voices that artists can work with, and I think these are very important programs.
Wow, exciting. I wish I had more time to talk with the three of you. There's so much to cover. I want to thank you all for what you're doing. You're bringing more people to the table to understand the beauty that the earth provides us, but also highlighting our need to understand the challenges, and thank you for all the work you're doing.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So much.
Please keep the conversation going and follow us or send us a message on social media or download our CUNY TV app. Be sure to join us next month to discuss the health of our oceans, a crucial component of our environmental challenges.